The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea Caulfield, and I am Director of Membership here at ASTA, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. I will also be serving as the moderator for today's webinar, Trends and Opportunities for Selling Wellness Travel. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items with you. We will be taking your questions at the end of the presentation. So to ask a question, you will use your GoToWebinar pane, which probably came up on the right-hand side of your screen. And near the bottom of the pane is an area that says questions. If you click on the arrow next to where it says questions, it will open up a window pane, and this is where you communicate with us. If you are having trouble hearing the presentation right now, please make sure your speakers are turned on. If you called in, try hanging up and dialing back in again. You can send me any technical issue via the questions pane as well, and I will try to answer them. I will respond to you via the same page. Please note all audience members are muted. We certainly want to hear from you, but with so many people on the call, background noise would be prohibitive, and we want everyone to be able to hear everything during the presentation. Finally, please note this webinar is being recorded and will be available on asta.org for members only in about 3 to 5 business days. So now, I will go ahead and turn it over to our speaker for today, Laura Powell. Laura, take it away.
Thank you, Andrea, and it's great to be with you all today to talk about all things wellness travel. And I do want to leave plenty of room at the end for questions. We're going to cover a lot of territory today, so let's get started. As you guys all know, there's such a wide spectrum of wellness tourism vacations these days, and the type of terms that are used in wellness tourism. And here you could see just some of them. So some of them may be familiar, some of them may not. We're going to cover a lot of this today. They all fall under the banner of wellness tourism, but each has its own nuances. So I do think that probably most of you, when you think about wellness tourism, and also your clients as well, you think about spas and destination resorts. But according to a pre-pandemic study by the consulting firm SRI, only 41% of all wellness vacations booked involved spas. So that was 41% before the pandemic. So I would argue that now, after what we've learned during the pandemic years, that percentage is actually lower. So what that's saying is clients are looking for wellness experiences beyond the typical spa, and that's what we are going to explore today. Let's look at the next slide. And as you can see, there is a wide world of wellness opportunities. Every country has its own indigenous kind of treatments, and then there are certain things that extend throughout the world. I mean, you could find destination spas in most places, but then you can also find certain treatments that are very specific to certain parts of the country, of the world, I should say. So this map just kind of gives you a bit of an idea that wellness trips can focus on anything from indigenous wellness practices, as I mentioned, to water treatments, to spending time in nature, to spending time in a sauna. There are a lot of different opportunities out there. Another thing that's happening right now is that retreats are becoming more prevalent as consumers are starting to demand themed wellness retreats to either reboot their mental health or to reduce anxiety or to get better sleep. And so we'll be talking a bit about the opportunities for you to sell retreats to your clients. We are also going to dig more into water-based wellness, integrative resorts, and European medical spas, because these are 3 areas that there's going to be huge growth in over the next few years, and there's a very lucrative opportunity for you in all 3 of those. But let's start with the next slide, which is talking about working with your client to figure out what is the right kind of wellness vacation for them. In some cases, your client may not even know that they need a wellness vacation, right? But then they may discover, you may discover through a conversation with them that your client is really tired or they're really anxious, or all they need to do is to get away from their devices. And so through talking to them, kind of interviewing them about what's going on in their life, what they want to do on a vacation, you can really hone in on the type of wellness vacation they want. And as you can see from this slide, they may just want to improve their fitness. And then in that case, you're going to be looking for resorts offering instructor-led fitness classes, maybe mindfulness classes. You may even lead them to a fitness retreat or like a biking or a hiking trip. That could be all great wellness opportunities for the person who wants to improve their fitness. But on the other hand, if your client is just interested in slowing down, you know, it could be anything from just going to a beach resort, right? But it could be going to a resort that has programming like forest bathing or breath work, or just, again, resorts that are set in nature, in rural areas, in small villages where people can just relax. Mindfulness, personal growth, same kind of thing, although in this case, you may want to look for a retreat or a resort that has more actual guided classes in mindfulness. Some people just want to get together with friends. And, you know, obviously social is a big part of wellness. And so look for resorts that offer different kind of classes that friends can take together. It might be cooking classes. It might be a fitness program. Even a recreational spa will work for somebody whose main motivation for going away is social and getting together with friends. Tending to aches and pains is something we're going to be talking about in a bit. And then finally, enhancing the mind-body connection, which might be more in the area of specialty practices like Tai Chi, biofeedback, or some of the other modalities that are out there. But as I say, the key thing when you're meeting with your client is to find out the why. Why? What is their motivation for? This should actually say their wellness visit. It's not necessarily a spa visit, right? Because I can't stress that enough. We want to expand your wellness world beyond the spa. Okay, so these are the main motivations. And once you discover what the main motivation is, then you have to ask your client, where do you want to go? Do they want to stay in the United States, or do they want to go overseas? If they want to go overseas, what country do they want to go to? And if they want to go to a specific country, what is more important to them, the type of treatment or the country they're going to? And the reason I say that is if your client, for example, wants to go to a hot springs and they also want to go to Japan, that's great because there are hot springs in Japan. But if your client wants to go forest bathing in a rainforest and wants to go to, I don't know, to Morocco, I would say, well, they're not going to be able to go to Morocco to do forest bathing in a rainforest because there are no rainforests in Morocco. So, you know, what is more important, going to Morocco or going to the rainforest? If it's going to Morocco, then you say, okay, well, you can't go to a rainforest, but there are hammams and there are other kind of wellness experiences that you could find that are specific to Morocco. So really, again, understanding what's more important, the destination or a specific wellness treatment. And then, of course, once you've focused in on those two things, then you can really hone in on, you know, what's your budget, how much time do you want to be away, and all of those things that you would normally do when you're selling a trip to a client. So with that said, let's look at some of the trends and the opportunities and go to the next the next slide. That's what it's called. Focus on balneology, which is a term you may not be familiar with. Balneology is a term we see used a lot in Europe, and basically it is using water for therapy, therapeutic bathing, soaking in hot springs, also in some cases drinking different kinds of mineral waters for different kind of treatments, for treating different ailments, and sometimes it even includes sitting in some mud. So balneology is a term you may want to keep in mind, but in this country, we really look at it mostly in terms of hot springs. And I am sure you have been reading a lot about hot springs recently. It was one of the top trends in the Global Wellness Institute's annual trend report. I know Travel Weekly this week or last week had a big story about hot springs and all of the developments. Right now, there are 50 new hot springs developments in the United States. They're either new, or I should say they're revitalizing old hot springs, because hot springs have been around forever. People have used them. The founding fathers used them. Cleopatra used them, for goodness sake. They really are very good for relaxation, for soothing one's aches and pains. And so finally, in this country, all of these old resorts, things like the Omni Homestead Resort and Castle Hot Springs, these have been around for a long time, but now with the sudden resurgence of interest in hot springs, these resorts are freshening up what they have, they're revitalizing their programming, and they're opening like hotcakes. So hot springs resorts are everywhere in the United States. You will also find that they are overseas as well. Obviously, I think, does the next slide, or hopefully our next slide shows us the Blue Lagoon, the lovely Blue Lagoon in Iceland, which it actually is not a natural hot. It's not a natural hot spring. I always thought it was, but when I went there, they said no, it's not. But anyway, be that as it may, there are opportunities, plentiful opportunities for soaking in mineral hot springs throughout Europe. You've got, hot springs in an unexpected place like Tuscany, but you've also got them in Germany, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Switzerland. You might even want to send your clients to Bath, England, or Spa, Belgium, which are two places that, again, got their names from this whole idea of bathing in mineral waters. Another hot new property right now that's opening this summer is in New Zealand. I'm going to probably pronounce it wrong, but it is the Waiariki Hot Springs Resort, which is opening this summer in Rotorua, New Zealand, which is a well-known area for thermal bathing. And it's going to have all the bells and whistles, very high-end. But the cool thing about this is it will also be using a lot of indigenous practices, which again is something that's really getting more popular in wellness, is when people travel to another country, they actually want to experience it in a traditional way. So that kind of hits all of the points, and so you might want to keep an eye out on what's happening in New Zealand. Australia as well, they're doing a lot of building in the hot springs arena. So you could find hot springs anywhere, and sometimes in other countries, they go by different names. So for example, in South America, a hot springs resort is going to be called Thermal Resort. In places like Morocco or Georgia or Turkey, the hammam is usually built around a hot springs, right? So in Japan, you've got this term called onsen, which is basically their version of a hot spring. But by any name, soaking in mineral waters is a great wellness experience. Your client will definitely feel better. And so it's something that you could probably recommend to just about any client, and they'll enjoy it. It might not be for the whole week. If they're going overseas, they might just want to do it for a day or two, but it's a great thing to add to the itinerary, particularly after a long airplane flight. Okay, let's go next to the trend of wellness retreats, because there are all sorts of wellness retreats that you probably are seeing popping up these days. In some cases, resort properties are hosting retreats, maybe for a weekend, maybe for a week. In some case, wellness gurus may work with a resort to design a retreat. And this is where you could come in. If you know a local health guru or a health or wellness influencer in your area, maybe you reach out to them and you say to them, why don't you get your tribe interested in doing a wellness retreat? And you could arrange the logistics for the group in terms of airfare and the resort. So think about who in your community might be able to lead a wellness retreat, and you could put things together. Similarly, you could do something similar in the arena of corporate retreats, which we're going to talk about momentarily. But first, I want to look at sleep retreats. It's funny because most of us, when we go on vacation, the last thing we think about is sleep. We're so busy doing different things, and we just want to experience as much as possible. But people are now, it's actually a thing, people are actually now going on vacation to sleep. And so what we're seeing is that a lot of hotels are designing custom sleep experience menus. You've got glamping resorts featuring sleeping in nature, and then you're getting sleep retreats as well. So the types of sleep-focused retreats offered vary tremendously as different establishments approach the concept in different ways. This slide shows a woman taking a sleep retreat at Grounds Hotel in London. They actually have a 2-night 40 Winks experience, which is designed specifically to help guests into a serene sleep. Some of the, you've seen a lot of hotels, obviously, they have pillow menus. Some are offering blackout shades. Some have circadian rhythm lighting. These are all things to start asking about if your client seems like they're sleep deprived. But on the other hand, there are resorts like Six Senses, which actually have full-on sleep retreats. They might last a couple days, they might last a week, but everything is designed around the guest learning how to sleep better. So if you have a client who is just sounding like they just need some good sleep, think about finding a sleep retreat or finding a resort property that really has some good amenities around the whole sleep experience. Let's go to corporate retreats, because I think this is a really interesting opportunity for you. As employee well-being becomes even more important in a post-pandemic hybrid workplace world, resorts and facilities are welcoming a new wave of health-conscious group travel. And this can be really, really lucrative for you, because the fact is, with remote work so prevalent these days, the need for team building via offsites and retreats has never been more important. And again, so you've got this combination of the desire for corporate wellness, but you also have the desire for team building. So I would encourage you, if you have corporate clients, if there are corporations that are based in your region, reach out to that company's HR person, or if they have one, a chief wellness officer, and say, hey, why don't we design a wellness retreat for your employees? Incredibly lucrative experience. You could, on one hand, actually design the program, again, working with a resort to use their resources. You may also want to go directly to one of these dedicated retreat centers. For example, Casa Alternavida is in Puerto Rico, which has the great advantage of being considered domestic for US citizens. And they only do wellness retreats, and they really specialize in corporate retreats. The guy who founded it is a longtime corporate retreat leader, and they have everything there. So you could basically find your corporate group with 20, 30 people, call up this particular retreat and say, okay, hey, I've got this group, this is their age range, this is what they're interested in. They'll design the whole thing for you, and you just work with the commission and the airfare. Again, very lucrative. So look into corporate retreats as a good possibility, corporate wellness retreats, as a way to expand your business. Okay, next section, which we're going to cover, is this focus on the spectrum between medical tourism and wellness tourism. And I think people get really confused about this. So let's kind of hone in on the key difference, which is that wellness tourism is proactive in nature. Generally, people who go on a wellness tourism vacation. They just want to stay healthy, right? They want to maintain their health, or they just want to improve their health and well-being. But basically, the motivation is they are motivated by a desire to stay well and to reduce stress and just to have a relaxing time. Whereas medical tourism, depending on where it is on the spectrum, is used to, and I apologize, I did not make these slides, so excuse the misspelling of receive, but anyway, travel to receive treatment for a diagnosed disease, ailment, or condition. So in other words, it is to get cured, right? It is a reactive in nature. Now, in some cases, people may be motivated by the lower cost of healthcare, for example, in other countries, or better, higher quality care. But these things are usually reactive to illnesses. Now, I am not going to talk today about the hardest core of hardcore medical tourism, which is people going overseas for a serious disease or for, to get surgery. I think that's not wellness at all. I mean, that is strictly medical tourism. On the spectrum, it's at the very, right-hand side of that. And I think that people who specialize in that kind of medical tourism really need to have a certain expertise in that area, because it is so serious. So I'm not going to be talking about that today, but rather I'm going to be talking about this concept of medical spas and the idea of a medical spa, which is very different, well, between what we have here in the US and what we have in Europe. Okay, so wellness tourism at one end of the spectrum, and I think we could go to the next slide. Okay, so the spectrum starts on the wellness side of things. And then, as I said, on the very right-hand side is the medical tourism, where somebody's going to end up at an actual hospital. So we're not going to that far right side. Okay, so at the beginning of the spectrum, on the wellness side of the equation, you start with like the traditional resort and a hotel spa. So like a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons, where there's a beautiful spa, and there are certainly, opportunities for wellness throughout the resort, and yet it's not dedicated, the resort isn't dedicated to wellness, right? I mean, there may be people there who are there with their family. There may be business people there. There may even be meeting groups there. So there are these resorts that are resorts, and they are available for the wellness traveler, but they're not dedicated to wellness. So those would be a spa, right? Whereas a wellness destination resort would be a place like the Lodge at Woodloch in Pennsylvania, or Sundara Inn and Spa, which is pictured here, which are beautiful facilities, usually located in nature, and every guest who is at Sundara, for example, is there for wellness. In fact, people walk around in the lobby in their bathrobes. Wellness is its reason for being. So that would be a destination spa resort or a destination wellness resort. So that would be, the Ritz-Carlton would be at the very left-hand side of the spectrum. Next, you move up to this kind of destination resort wellness concept. And then we move into integrative spas, which I think is the next slide. Yes, and integrative wellness is adding Western medical and scientific procedures into their menu of offerings. They offer a lot of wellness, but there are also doctors on hand who might be doing treatments like, you might have a consultation with a medical professional about how to reduce stress. There might be some preventive medical testing, maybe some non-invasive therapies. I call it medical tourism light, because at an integrative wellness resort, you're not going to go get surgery. You're not going to get treated for a disease per se. But if you want some basic medical services, if you're interested in getting your biological markers tested, or getting other kind of maybe IV infusions and this kind of thing, a property that offers medical wellness that combines this idea of having some medical treatment along with wellness might be right for your client. Canyon Ranch and Miraval would be examples in this country. You don't see that much integrative wellness in this country because of the way medicine and medical facilities are licensed. So you see a lot more of this integrative wellness resort concept happening in Europe. Shaw Wellness Clinic, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is a very high-end resort that really is very high-tech and has some really cool options for medical testing. But there are others as well. Lanzerhof has a couple of new integrative wellness places in Europe. Six Senses again is very much into the integrative wellness concept. So that one is kind of right in the middle of the spectrum, where they're going to get that full range of the wellness experience and the massages and the yoga classes, but also have access to licensed medical professionals to kind of get a little bit of advice and that kind of thing. Then you've got this whole concept of medi-spas or medical spas. Now, when we think of medical spas in the United States, we're really talking here about destination or day spas that offer traditional and complementary medical services supervised or administered by medical professionals. But those I think that definition is even a little off. What I would say is that these are spas that basically exist to give people Botox, to give people fillers, to do laser treatments. Again, I mentioned earlier that IVs are becoming more popular in the wellness world. So what medical spas do is they're more cosmetic in nature, right? I mean, people aren't going there to be healed. They're not necessarily even going there for wellness. Basically, a lot of anti-aging processes that need to be done under the auspices of a licensed medical professional, but you aren't really getting medical care per se. So then there's this whole other concept over in Europe. And this is a whole different ballgame. And this is something that I think is a huge opportunity for you. I think that every person of a certain age, that being anyone who's like above 30, needs the medical spa treatments that Europe offers. However, what they don't realize it even exists. In fact, I didn't even realize this whole concept existed until I went to Europe last year and discovered it for myself. And now I really can't recommend it enough. You've probably all heard of this concept of going for the cure, and how for years Germans and Eastern Europeans have gone to take the waters, and they get like 2 weeks or a month at one of these beautiful resorts, and they basically attend to their health needs for a month, and it's subsidized by the federal government. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, Americans can now take advantage of some of these facilities. No, our insurance plans will not cover what's done over there, but the fact of the matter is, as I will discuss in a little while, in some places the care is so cheap that it's actually less expensive to get treatments they are paying on your own than it is to pay through insurance in the United States. Anyway, European medical spa, what is it? Well, it's basically a combination of scientific Western health practices with alternative care and wellness. One of the doctors I talked to over there called it traditional Western medicine. So think about, traditional Chinese medicine. They use these practices like acupuncture that have been used for hundreds, thousands of years. Well, traditional Western medicine incorporates those practices that have been used for hundreds of years, like bathing in mud, like hot springs, but then they also bring in modern day medical care. So it's a very integrative approach that's both preventive and curative. And what I would say is most of the European medical spas that I'm talking about here are not designed to do surgeries, are not designed to treat serious diseases. Rather, they deal with people who have chronic ailments. And again, I think almost everybody has a chronic ailment, whether it is that you have aches and pains, maybe you have or arthritis, maybe you have eczema or other skin problems, maybe you have some problems with breathing, problems with allergies. The great thing about the European medical spa concept is, depending on what kind of natural resources are available, certain spas focus on certain kinds of conditions. So a spa that was centered in an area that had a lot of a particular mineral that's good for the skin would focus on skin conditions. There's a lot to learn about this, and we'll probably have to do some more seminars about this at another point, and I will certainly be speaking about this at the ASTA conference next month in more detail. But the reason I want you to know about these European medical spas is, one, there's consumer demand, even though they don't know they need it. But if you introduce them to it, they will be sold, and they will likely want to go back again and again. I know my plan now, every year, I'm going somewhere in Europe to do a 2-week stay at one of these medical spas. They also do require longer stays, so they're more lucrative for you. Generally, they recommend a minimum 2-week stay. It's lovely to be able to stay a month, but of course, for most Americans, that's not a possibility. I stayed for a week, and I got plenty of benefit out of that. So, you know, understanding the European medical spa gives you the opportunity to sell longer stays. It gives your clients a way to experience Europe in a new way. You know, they're going to be at these resorts with other Europeans. They're going to learn about some traditional treatments. They may, you know, want to stay at a resort that's in a historic town, like so many of the resorts are in the Czech Republic, or they may just want to stay at a medical spa that is in the middle of somewhere in nature. But it's very therapeutic. But again, I would say it's more for chronic conditions, but they will have access to medical professionals. And in fact, many of these medical spas are under the auspices of a country's health ministry. So, I mean, it is medical. It definitely is medical, but that said, they also do have wellness facilities built in. So let's go to the next spa. Next slide. I keep saying that. Next spa. You know what's on my mind. What I did after, well, okay, so I spoke at the European Spas Association annual Congress last year in Slovakia. And I stayed at the Insana facility in Piešťany, Slovakia, which is not pictured here, but we're going to get to Slovenia in a minute. And what I like about the medical spa approach in Europe is that there are places to fit all price ranges. So even if your client isn't ultra wealthy, they can do a European medical spa vacation. So when I was in Slovakia, I stayed on this island of Piešťany, and a company called Insana, which focuses on medical spas in Europe. They operated one main clinic on the island, but there were 4 different hotels. There was a 2-star hotel, a 3-star hotel, a 4-star hotel, and a 5-star hotel. Everybody from all of the hotels used the same medical facility, but you know, if you wanted to stay at a 5-star hotel, you could. Then it's going to be more expensive. If you wanted to stay at the 2-star hotel, you could, and it would be less expensive per day. At the same time, if you did stay at the 5-star property, they also had additional medical treatments that were available only to guests of the 5-star hotel. And they had their own spa, which featured a typical wellness spa, very modern wellness spa designed by one of Spain's top designers, and it had all the things you would expect out of a wellness center. It had the pools, the saunas, the different kinds of showers. So the point being that this was one place, one destination in Piešťany, Slovakia, but you could have a client spending $200 a day, all inclusive, or you could have a client spending $1,000 a day, all inclusive, depending on what your client's budget was. So after I left Slovakia, I went to Slovenia, and I went and stayed for one night at this place called the Terme Olemea in Slovenia, and I also visited another place called the Terme Laško. Both were very modern and beautiful natural surroundings. And actually, the Terme Laško had an Ayurvedic medical clinic in addition to its traditional Western medical clinic. So, and these were very much a real combination of both medical but also wellness. I think, an American client would feel very comfortable at either of those places, because you could stay at this resort and feel like you were just kind of at a wellness resort and not even really feel that there was a medical component to it. But there is, so that if the client wanted to go and get some medical treatment, they could. So let me kind of take you through my experience quickly of what I experienced on my own in Slovenia, because I wanted to just go to one of these places to deal with all my aches and pains. So I couldn't, frankly, afford the 5-star Terme Olemea resort. So I needed something less expensive. So next slide, if we have it. I spent 5 days at the Grand Hotel Primus, which is located in Ptuj, Slovenia, which is actually the oldest town in Slovenia. Now, this was later described to me as a functional 3-star property, and it was fine. I mean, a very basic room, as you could see. The food, you got 2 meals a day. The food was passable. It wasn't ultra great, but there was plenty of food. They had a buffet, so there were a lot of choices. Some of the fitness facilities were a little older. They weren't, the latest Technogym equipment. But all that said, the medical care was unbelievable. So what my process was, first day, your client goes in, or in my case, I went in, met with the doctor, talked to the doctor for an hour, and the doctor set up a daily program for me with 5 different treatments that would be repeated every day. The treatments would last from 20 to 40 minutes. So, for example, I told her what was ailing me, and she said, okay, what you're going to need, you're going to start every day off by going to our pool, and we have a group therapy session in the pool for people with lower back pain. Then you are going to go and get electrostimulation on some of my tight muscles, and then I was going to get a massage, and then I was going to get physical therapy, and then I was going to get lymphatic drainage. So every day I would get those 5 treatments, generally in the morning, so I had the afternoons free, and then I could do what I wanted in the afternoon. I could work out, I could walk, I could wander around the grounds, I could use the pool and the hot tubs at the spa. I could also go to the sauna as well. So as I mentioned, what I got was a hotel room, 2 meals a day, access to all of the facilities, and 5 medical treatments every day, plus at the end, another visit with the doctor. So 2 intensive visits with the doctor at the beginning and the end of the stay. And it cost me less than $200 a night, all in. So now this particular place might not be for everyone. Kind of is a little reminiscent of, old timey Eastern Europe, but I kind of dug the place, and it was a very authentic experience. So even if your client says, I really don't think I could do that, it's possible. There's a lot to learn, like I said, about this. It's complicated. I would recommend, if you're interested in this whole concept, to go to the European Spas Association website to learn a little more. But I can answer some more questions in the Q&A about this, or hot springs, or really anything else wellness that you'd like to ask some questions about. So Andrea, let's see if we've got any good questions from our audience.
Great, Laura, thank you. In this European area, the food that was included in that hotel, was it wellness oriented as well?
Well, it was not at my functional 3-star. However, at the one I mentioned, the other one I mentioned, the Terme Lasco, it was again a buffet, and they certainly had some things that were not as wellness oriented, but I would say it was pretty much wellness oriented. What you will find at a lot of European spas that will surprise you is the fact they do serve alcohol, and they do serve like filet mignon, because people aren't necessarily going for wellness. That's kind of the difference. I mean, they definitely consider themselves medical in the treatment, but yet the wellness doesn't necessarily flow throughout the whole place in the way that it would if you went to like a canyon ranch.
Gotcha. Thank you. So the resort what was the name of the resort hotel you mentioned during this sleep retreat topic?
Well, there were a couple of different ones. Six Senses has a lot of different sleep programs, the brand Six Senses. And then the one city hotel that I mentioned was Brown's Hotel in London. But certainly having these sleep experiences is not unique. And I'm sure for any of you who read any of the trade magazines or whatever, you're just seeing more and more kind of sleep related programming being offered by different hotels, and certainly something to make your client aware of, because even if it's not a sleep retreat per se, but it's just sleep amenities that will help your client sleep better, it's important for you to know about.
Perfect. So Diane asks, if you were just starting out, which U.S. resort would be a good use if you're interested in like the hot springs kind of thing?
I think that something like Castle Hot Springs in Arizona has a really robust kind of spa program that's built around, their hot springs, but they've also got some typical medical, not medical, I should say, but they've also got all the different hot springs experiences as well. There's a number in Colorado, the Glenwood Hot Springs, Pagosa Springs in Colorado. Also, the Omni Homestead, which is in Virginia, has recently, as I mentioned, kind of revitalized its hot springs and the wellness opportunities that are around it. Sunrise Springs in New Mexico is another nice facility built around springs. There's a lot of them out west. You're going to find a lot out west, but there are some in the Midwest and the East as well. You just have to look a little harder.
Great, thank you. And Maureen asks if that wellness tourism map is available somewhere other than just on.
It is. Yes, it is. Several of these slides, not all of them, but the map can be found if you are part of Wellness Travel University, which of course is a free benefit for ASTA members. So take a look at Wellness Travel University, and you'll see the map. You'll see the list of the different motivations that you should be familiar with for wellness travel, and a lot of other good information as well.
Excellent. So let me see. We'll just do a couple more. Let me see. So what was that island again in Slovakia you stayed on?
Okay, it's Piestany. It's Piestany. And the hotel company that runs the hotels there is called Ensana, Ensana. I think they're a real interesting, if you want to learn a bit about this whole concept, Ensana hotels are a good bet to start with, because they have properties in England, they have properties in Hungary and Romania, in Slovakia, and they do a really nice job of combining the medical treatment with having actual hospitality. You go to some of these facilities and they do feel like they're more medical in nature. and the hospitality part of the equation is a little lacking, but I think Ensana has done a good job of kind of making you feel like you're on vacation, but you're still, getting your chronic ailments taken care of.
All right, let me go one place through. I'm so fascinated with that sleep retreat thing. I love sleep and have a problem sleeping. So if I can go somewhere and just sleep, that's like my dream come true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems crazy again to a lot of people. Like, why would you go all the way to wherever to sleep? But, even like the glamping retreat in nature, can you imagine, you're outside and you hear the sound of the crickets and the only light that you have is the stars that are lighting up the sky. I mean, it's just, there's something and the sounds are just so soothing. You'll never be the same again.
All right, just a couple more. What was the name of that European company for medical spas that you talked about?
Yeah, and that is Ensana, Ensana, Ensana.
And then
and there are many other companies as well, and there are many individual properties. But like I say, I think that's a good one to start with because they're also used to an American clientele and an international clientele. This is one thing that's very important if you are going to book a European spa. In most cases, they do have English-speaking staff because, frankly, they cater to an international crowd, and English is kind of the international language. But you do want to make sure that the doctors and the healthcare providers do speak English. And again, some of these may be a little like the functional 3-star property I stayed at. I was the only American there. As far as I could tell, I was the only non-Slovenian there. So, some spas are more oriented toward international travelers than others. And that's why, going with a company that has more than one hotel, you're more likely to have that kind of welcoming experience.
excellent. And we'll go with one more here. What suppliers do you specifically use for these wellness experiences? Is there one that stands out for the other, or is it just dependent on where they're going in the world and what they're looking for?
It does depend on where they're going and what they're looking for. I mean, that's where if you want to get the expertise in becoming, a wellness travel specialist, again, I really encourage you to at least even, look at the curriculum that we have at Wellness Travel University, because it will really give you a sense. I mean, I really ran through a lot of stuff today, and I realized I went through things really fast. And I think if you go back over the curriculum, then everything I said today will kind of make even more sense. But it's a wide world. And so, somebody who is a supplier of one type of wellness experience isn't going to be a good supplier for another type of wellness experience. So I know that's not the answer you want. There's not necessarily an easy turnkey solution. But there are suppliers, like I said, if you want to do corporate retreats, there are certain, companies that specify that either design corporate wellness retreats, or as I mentioned, like that property in Puerto Rico that just does these retreats. So it's a matter of just pinpointing and finding the right people or places for the wellness experience that your clients want.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, everybody. And just so everyone is aware, if you did miss a name of a resort, something, this was recorded. So we should have it up early next week on our website here at ASTA. So if you want to re-listen to it to get those names and information, it'll be available there. And also, again, the Wellness Travel University Gold course is free to members. So you can find that information under a Member Advantage program on asta.org as well. And you can certainly email us here at askasta@asta.org if you have questions about that. And again, Laura is going to be in Puerto Rico in a couple weeks. And if you want to learn more about this, get more information, please come to her session. I don't remember which day it is off the top of my head. I should know, but I think it's the first main day.
I think the third. I think it's the third.
Perfect. So come learn about that. Come join us for ASTA Global Convention. And again, thank you so much for taking the time out today. Laura, thank you so much for this great information. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.